Hello, friends. This is Dolores Williams of DW's View Stand Up. If we do not stand up for what we believe, who will? This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. My sponsor helps keep this podcast on the air. I want to thank my peak performance coach and my friend, Kim Yater. If you're feeling stuck in any part of your life, professional or on a personal level, then you need to contact my sponsor. If you just can't move forward, she is the person you need to speak to. You can reach Kim at Calendy, CALENDY CALENDY.com. Make sure I get that right, Kim, /Kim Yater. That's KIMYEATER. It's okay to be stuck, but it's not okay to stay stuck, dear friends. To my audience, I want to thank you for listening to these podcasts. I really appreciate you listening and try to bring the best we can to you. And share this information. And, you listen each week, and my goodness, I really appreciate it. Now, I want to introduce you to my special guest today, who's Todd Madison. I'll tell you a little bit about Todd. Todd is a long-time parent, student, advocate, and activist in San Diego County. He was the first parent representative in Oceanside's Local Control Accountability Plan Committee. He ran for the school board in 2020, but he didn't win, and that's okay. We need more people to run, have the courage to run and represent our students and our parents. He is involved in many organizations that support students and parents in San Diego and in California. And we'll learn more about the organizations that Todd is involved with. Help me welcome Todd Madison. Good morning, Todd. How are you?
Great. How are you?
I am blessed. I want to welcome you to DW's View, and we're going to go ahead and I want to first thank you. I want to thank you for being an advocate, Todd, for children and families. And, I know that your family believes that our schools need to pay attention to what their customers and parents, they need to pay attention to them and what their needs are and what parents want for the education of their children, and not just top down heavy, to you do this, but they need to listen to the parents and be concerned about what parents want for their kids.
Absolutely.
And not just what these districts want for themselves. Mm-hmm. But anyway, now, Todd, currently you serve as a research director with the public compensation watchdog site called Transparent California. Now, Transparent California currently has pay records for over 28 million public employees in the state of California. How does it benefit you to have those pay records of these employees of the state of California?
Sure. No, this comes from my background or my involvement in the schools. When I first started looking at the school districts, my past history in private industry, I was the director of service for a division of our national retailer. So I had budget responsibility for about $20 million and 300 employees. And one of the critical things is spending the money in the way that benefits our customers. You always have to do that. If you're a local store and you don't spend your money in ways that make your customers come to visit you, then you go out of business. So what I saw in the school district is I saw that they were spending their money in ways that did not benefit the kids. They were spending their money in ways that benefit themselves, the district employees, the school boards, all this. So I started analyzing their data, and I quickly discovered that about 80 to 90% of their cost is in pay. Labor costs for employees. So I started looking around to figure out, okay, how can I dig into that and figure out where it's going? I discovered Transparent California. So if everybody goes to transparentcalifornia.com, they can look up the pay records for any public employee in the state of California, or pretty much all of them. We collect records from over 2,500 agencies every year. I make public record requests for up to 3,000 public record requests a year to get that data, and then we publish it on the site. So that's what's important, is so that when you pay for your tax dollars and you're putting money into our government to do something for you, the citizen, you should know where that money is going. So by going to Transparent California, you can do that. I'd urge everybody to go ahead and look at Transparent California, check out your local government, your city, your school district, your water district, whatever it is, see what people are being paid, but be sure that you're sitting down when you do it. And if you have heart medicine, take it first, because you will be amazed at how many people make close to $500,000 on our government tax dollars.
Wow.
So be sure to check that out.
Well, thank God you're doing that, Todd, because that's certainly information that most people don't even know it's available for them to get that. And thank you for doing that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Now, I want to ask you this. I see that you are the first parent representative in Oceanside's local control accountability plan committee. Now, what is the purpose of this committee and what are your duties in that?
It's a legally mandated committee. The state passed some laws in the early 2010s that changed the ways that schools are funded. What they essentially did is wipe away all the mandates for funding and give money to the districts as a lump sum and said, okay, you figure out how to spend it. For me, that's a huge red flag, because when you do that, of course, then people spend it in ways that benefit themselves. Mm-hmm. The Local Control Accountability Plan Committee was defined by the state as the way of parents having an influence over that. So the parents can sit there and say, okay, let's spend our money on playgrounds or cleaning the bathrooms or better science equipment or whatever they want to do. So I figured I should get involved in that. So as such, I was the first parent to volunteer for the local control. The LCAP committee is what it's called in Oceanside. And I spent 3 years on that. I'm no longer on that. And the reason for that is very simple, is because after spending 3 years trying to get them to pay attention to what parents want and having them completely ignore it, I resigned in protest in 2018. Because once again, they took all the money that the state gave us and they gave themselves raises. And they took from the kids. They cut bus service from the poor kids in Crown Heights, poor Latino kids. They cut school psychologists, they cut librarians, but yet they could afford to give themselves raises that cost $5 million for the district. So when that happened, I resigned because I was just not going to be a part of that, the cover story, that the district was giving. So
that sounds like total waste of taxpayer money.
And they're ignoring parents. I mean, they're totally ignoring, the parents in Oceanside voted, 42% of them wanted lower class sizes as their number one priority. The district spent exactly $0 on that, despite the fact that it was the highest priority in the district in their survey. So they spent nothing on it. Meanwhile, of course, they spent $5 million on raises for themselves. So, that's an example. Everyone out there is welcome to get involved in their local, every district has one. So if you're in a school district, you can join that yourself. But be warned, it's a pretty heavy push to try and get them to pay attention to you.
Yeah. Now, since you resigned, is anyone else been a watchdog over these people and what they're doing?
We have parents that are a part of the committee, but as far as I know, we have no parents that are actually willing to stand up and advocate on behalf of the parents in the district. Our board is completely controlled by the union, so when it comes to voting in favor of raises for all employees, of course, that's their first priority. It's not parents. So I don't know of anybody in the Oceanside LCAP committee anymore that is really pushing for parent interests.
Oh, it's amazing that they're able to get away with that.
Well, yeah, they can get away with it because the state leaves it very vague. So when they passed the LCFF plan, originally when they passed Proposition 30, I don't know if you remember, in 2012, Prop 30 passed. We were very beneficent. The people voted higher taxes on themselves to benefit education. A year later, the state superintendent of schools said it was originally designed to be used for improving education. And about a year later, Tom Torlaxson gave a ruling that said it could be used for pay instead of existing employees. So immediately that's what happened. So, as a result, the state basically just, it's kind of frosting on the cake. They have this nice layer of frosting that says that parents have input on their school district, but in reality, the majority of the cake is whatever the district wants to do.
Oh my goodness. All I can say is people that do that kind of stuff will they'll have to pay one day, and
Yeah, yeah, we would
very
prefer to get
sad.
it fixed for our kids today.
Oh yeah,
It's,
yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
But unless they police themselves, which they don't, and they're not listening to the parents, then
yeah, yeah,
mm,
yeah. No, that if you're
mhm,
in Sweetwater District, they're a prime example.
mm,
They created fraudulent accounting about 2 or 3 years ago. They claimed that
yeah,
they had 30 million in revenue they didn't have, and they did that to justify a pay raise for themselves.
mm,
Basically, they said we can give ourselves a raise because we've got this $30 million. And then they found out later that they didn't have 30 million. They're on the verge of bankruptcy. They got taken over by the county, and in the meanwhile, no one's pay raise went away. You know,
mm.
that was
Well, it sounds like legalized theft.
it's pretty close to corruption, I believe.
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Now you also as a leader of the district parent advisory committee and a current member of the El Camino High School Site Council. Now, what do you do with that group?
The District Parent Advisory Committee is again, it's similar to the LCAP. It's a legally mandated committee. The state requires that every district have one. If you don't know that your district has one, you should check out there because they do have one. They're required to. Parents can participate in that and they can have input on district decisions. It's a very similar story there, though, to the LCAP committee because I originally attended a meeting of the District Parent Advisory Committee in Oceanside several years ago that had 4 parents attending. So we have 36,000 parents in our district. 4 parents were showing up for this committee.
Wow.
So a person I met there who's now a current board member, Stacy Begin, and I and a gentleman named Noel Warren decided we were going to fix that. So we got involved, took charge of the committee, increased the attendance dramatically. Towards the end of that, we ended up with 60 or so parents routinely attending, which is not huge, but it's 1,000% increase. We
Mhm,
thought that was
mhm.
great. Um, but we later found out, or at least I later found out, that the district was once again using that as cover. They were using the district parent advisory committee and my participation to claim that they were taking parent input on things, but not actually doing it. They wouldn't
Mhm.
provide us with any ability to have input. They wouldn't pay attention to anything that we said that the parents wanted to do. And so again, I resigned from that committee as well. Right about the same time when they used the money to give raises to themselves rather than pay attention to what the parent advisory committee wanted.
Oh man, that seems like it's a problem everywhere.
Yeah, it's pretty common throughout the San Diego County. If you look at any district, that's what they're doing with their money.
My. Well, thank you for being a stand, for taking a stand and doing the best that you can. Now, as the founding member of the San Diego Schools, what is the purpose and mission of this group? I want to make sure we get all your groups in there because you're doing a lot of stuff. And I
Sure,
want to expose all of these.
sure. Well, thank you for that. San Diego Schools, that its point is to be a support mechanism for parents who want to get involved. So if you go to the san diego schools.org website or the Facebook group San Diego Schools, there are a bunch of other parents there that are like-minded, and they're doing things in their districts. They're going up against their board. They're speaking out. They're making their voices heard. And San Diego Schools would like to help support that. So we would provide if people have a question about the Brown Act, if people have a question about participating in a board meeting, we have some posts on there that discuss transparency and spending. There's a primer on how school funding works. There's a bunch of different resources. So if parents want to get involved, that's a good way to start.
Hmm. Now, is there any way to take any kind of legal action against what these districts are doing?
I have investigated that. At this point, I haven't found any law firm that's willing to take it up. Certainly, if we had $100,000, I'm sure we could hire somebody to do that. But of course, parents are not, they're out there
Yeah.
working and making a living, and
Hmm.
it's hard to generate that kind of interest. So I would love to. If there's any lawyers out there that would like to investigate it, there are some violations of funding law that are happening right and left the schools are not disclosing, for example, the impact on students of giving raises to labor groups as they're required to under AB 1200. There's a law regarding that, and they don't do it. But the only reason they get away with it is because no one is there watching. No one is able to
Yeah.
step in and say, you can't do that. So,
Mm. Well, I would think that, with so many lawyers, there's an abundance of people in law. I would think that could be something, they could form a group and maybe take that on the side just to represent parents and students in the state, Seems like, I don't
Yeah.
know.
It would be a great thing. I've connected up with several law firms, including the ACLU, trying to get some interest in this, and haven't been able to move and make a dent in it yet. I've actually talked to the County Office of Education that has oversight responsibility. I've talked to the state's fiscal crisis management assistance team. Those are the people who step in and take control of the district's finances when they get in trouble. But unfortunately, everybody just kind of shrugs and says, oh, well,
Yeah.
that's the way it is. So
Yeah.
with,
Probably don't want to deal with the teachers' unions.
well,
That's,
there's a lot of money against it. Yeah, it's pretty easy for them to write checks for $1 million. Not so easy for parents. So
mm, mm. Yeah, I'm talking about next question I was going to ask about how to improve transparency and accountability in the schools, but sounds like that's a hard way to go and to find people who actually would hold them accountable. I just don't know,
well, that there
how
are
that could
ways to do
happen.
it. I mean, I think it's incumbent on parents to demand it. We are
Yeah,
technically in charge, and the fundamental problem we have is that parents go to sleep.
yeah.
You ask any parent, what is the most important thing in your life, and they will say, my kids. Period. Any parent will
Hmm.
say that.
Hmm.
100%. And then if you ask them, what's the most important thing in your child's life, almost all will say education. Their education.
Yeah.
That's the answer. But yet, if you go to a parent advisory committee and there's four
Mm.
people there, it's 1 hour out of a month. It's 1 hour. But yet, 36,000 parents in Oceanside can't spend 1 hour out of a month to go make their voices heard or show up at a school board meeting. Again, another couple hours a month.
Mm.
They can't do it. And now, with all the mask issues and the
Hmm.
reopening and the vaccinations and the CRT issues, social agendas, all the things that are going on, we have more parents now involved in paying attention to what's going on in their schools than ever before. And I really, really, really hope that when this all kind of dies over, at some point, we will at least be back somewhat to normal. And when all that happens, I hope parents remember this and they remember what their schools did, and they remember that they need to be paying attention and they need to be involved and they need to step up and make their voice heard. That's how we
Yeah,
do it.
yeah, I totally agree with that, Todd. Yes, because there's so much against children when, parents send their kids to school trusting that the school is going to do the right thing and not even knowing that our children are being, their minds are being totally warped and they're being turned against their country, even turned against their parents and everything that they've been taught and learn at home and in church. All of that's going out the window, and parents not being aware is allowing it to happen.
Yep, yep, absolutely. I mean, I think parents are the number one thing in this.
Mhm.
They need to make.
Now, what other parent association advocacy groups are you involved in?
So the Parent Association is probably the primary one right now. The Parent Association was put together more as an advocacy. San Diego Schools is designed to kind of support parents in their advocacy. The Parent
Hmm.
Association is more designed to organize and actually create groups that will do that. So the Parent Association currently has, I don't know if it's 100 or more chapters throughout the state. We have several in San Diego County, Poway, Oceanside, Carlsbad, San Diego. There are several parents. I'm not sure if Sweetwater is yet a member, but there are several groups.
Oh,
And the biggest win we've done is that everybody may remember last spring, all our schools were closed. They were getting millions and millions of dollars from the federal government to open up.
hmm.
Oceanside got $60 million. San
Wow.
Diego Unified got almost $500 million to open
Wow.
up, but they weren't opening up. So the Parent Association was part of a lawsuit to sue the state to declare that the regulations keeping schools closed were arbitrary. They were just making stuff up. And we got a temporary restraining order in that lawsuit that said the judge agreed with us. San Diego Superior Court judge said, yes, we agree with you. The regulations are arbitrary. We're going to require that the schools prove that they can't actually open up if they're going to stay closed. When that happened, that's when all the schools started to open up. When people saw all the different schools opening up in San Diego County, it's because they were looking at this lawsuit and saying, okay, we don't want to risk being taking the brunt of the next lawsuit on this, so we'll start opening up. So that was probably the biggest success with the Parent Association. So we're now currently, we're not part of the Let Them Breathe effort. I don't know if you've heard of that.
Yes, I have.
Yeah. So Let Them Breathe is at the forefront of the anti-mask, or mask choice, I should say. It's not anti-mask. I mean, Let Them Breathe is absolutely in favor of letting people who want to wear masks. But we're also in favor of people letting people who don't want to wear masks. I mean, having masks on kids is ridiculous in school.
Oh, yeah.
The data shows that the risk to kids of getting COVID in school, or asymptomatic kids passing it on to adults, is actually lower than being injured in a car accident on the way to school. So letthembreathe.net is where people can go. They have a lawsuit. I'm not actually an official part of Let Them Breathe. I believe in their cause. Mm-hmm. And they have a lawsuit going on right now. It's in today's paper, as a matter of fact. The front page of the San Diego Union Tribune has an article on it where they're suing the state to make sure that districts can make their own decision on mask choice, that they're not forced one way or the other.
Yeah, so, I heard about that. Matter of fact, I couldn't go to Oceanside that day. They had the beginning rally on that. But,
I was there.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but I was just criminal. I mean, all the tests that were done on the masks that these kids were wearing, there was no COVID in there at all, but yet there was a lot of other dangerous stuff. And plus, they're breathing that carbon dioxide, putting that back into their bodies, and they're having those masks on all day. That is actually dangerous for anybody to be wearing a mask at long periods of time like that. And it's just totally, Todd, with all the school districts that were open during, who stayed open and had their kids in school, those kids weren't in school with masks. And there are other countries where kids are going to school, they don't have on masks, and they didn't get sick.
There is plenty of data. We had a bunch of very good parents speak at the Oceanside board meeting. One of them, Jamie Ballard, who's also a school choice volunteer, she's a scientist. And she stood up so that the district gave a presentation on why they needed to maintain, masks and all this stuff. And Jamie said it best when she stood up. She said, that was a great presentation. It was awesome, but there was no data at all in that presentation. So the entire school district's presentation was based on just an emotional thing. We're all afraid, we need masks. There was nothing in there that had any data at all supporting that. So,
I think it's more control than anything.
Yeah. And fear. They're controlled by the unions who are afraid, and the unions, I think, are using it as a mechanism to demonstrate their power.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
And, if you're that afraid, then you probably need to get into a different line of work,
Yeah, especially when right now, if, I don't know, I'm not pro or anti-vaccination. People should be able to make their own decision. But, any teacher who's afraid can get vaccinated if they want to. And if they're not afraid, they shouldn't have to work. So, if we sent schools and the data is very clear that asymptomatic kids do not spread COVID. That's the data. So, if your kid is sick, keep them home. That's great. We should always do that. But if your kid is not sick, sending them to school without a mask will not spread COVID to anyone else, including the adults. So there's no reason to be afraid.
So true. So true. Now, you are also the San Diego County Chair for California School Choice Foundation. Now, would you tell us what led to this foundation for the California School Choice Foundation, and what would you share with parents about what is being taught to children in school? We look at the graduation requirements, all these things. Can you speak on that?
Well, yeah, we have a fundamental problem. I used to be a project manager for a large corporation, and we did what we call root cause analysis. So, when you have a problem, if you have a fire, you can put the fire out, that's great, but you got to figure out why the fire happened. You can't just say, well, oops, we put the fire out, now we're just going to keep a bucket around in case it happens again. You need to figure out why. So when we look at what the problem we have with education is right now, the root cause is the fact that parents do not have a choice of where to send their kids for education. They're forced. So, they're forced to go to a public school that teaches CRT philosophies or social agenda or things like that. Now, there are probably parents out there that are happy with that. I guarantee that there are. And personally, I don't really care. I mean, if someone wants to put their kid through that kind of indoctrination, then okay, they're the parent. They should have the right to do that. But the rest of the parents should not. And they should have the right to do something else. So last spring, when we saw all the schools shutting down, or a year ago spring, saw the schools shutting down, we saw the CRT, ethnic studies things being implemented. We saw the social agendas. All of that would have ended very quickly if parents could have just said, yes, you're welcome to take your kid to this school and have them taught however you want, or not be open, or whatever it is. I'm just going to take my kid somewhere else. If you could have done that, none of this would have happened. The entire controversy we've seen over the last year would have been ended in May, because the schools would have seen their kids leaving. They would have said, gee, we do need to pay attention to parents, or we're going to lose all our kids. And at that point, they could make a choice. They could continue on with their agenda, or they could change. And if they continued on, then parents who didn't agree with that, they could go ahead and do it. So that's where the School Choice Foundation comes in. We've been in existence for a few years. We're working on putting an initiative together. It's going to the Secretary of State, like I think today, or maybe early next week.
Okay.
We're going to put a constitutional amendment on the ballot in 2022. So,
Okay.
yeah. So that
Yeah.
amendment would produce a right for parents to choose the education of their kids, not a privilege. We don't want to go on bended knee and say, oh, please, please, please let us educate our kids the way we want. We want it to be a right. So, so that's what we're doing. So, do you want me to discuss like the details of the initiative?
Well, yeah. Now, how is that initiative going? I know you're getting ready to put that on the ballot next year, but how is it going right now? And when will you be at a point where you're ready to collect the signatures?
We have almost 23,000 supporters statewide for it. In San Diego County, we're over 2,000. We have almost 200 people volunteering to help the effort, which is the largest of any county in the state of California. So San Diegans are very much in favor. There's been some polling recently. A couple of weeks ago, the California Policy Center released some polling. A majority of Californians are in favor. This is the first time ever in polling in the state that a majority have come down in favor of school choice. So that's significant. Parents have seen what's going on now in education. So, and what's really key about that is a couple of things. First is that minorities are in favor of it 71%.
Wow.
So, we've seen, and what I've seen in my involvement in schools is that, parents can get ignored. Minority parents can get even more ignored. They just, they don't have, the voice, they don't have, and often what we see, as I was leading these committees, often the people who participate are people who have luxuries, people who have the time, people who aren't working two jobs, people who don't have, single moms and working parents and all those challenges everybody else has. And, they can show up for these meetings. So what happens is that the people who aren't able to be there because they're working hard, they're working, both parents are working, they're working 4 jobs, they're all this stuff. They aren't at those meetings, and they have an even harder time making their voice heard. So for those parents, low income, minorities, other parents that are challenged, they could, with school choice, they could simply just take their kid elsewhere, and they don't have to spend all the time to advocate and push and fight this whole thing. So, so we have minorities, and then amazingly enough, 50% of Democrats are in favor of school choice. So, I mean, this is totally a bipartisan effort. 61% of Republicans, 50% of Democrats. So, it appeals to, I think everybody has now seen that school choice is what we need to do.
Well, that's the way it should be, Todd, because we sometimes get lost in politics, and when it should be about what's right as Americans.
Yeah.
And we fight over Republican, Democrat, and it just causes division.
Yeah.
And especially today, causes division among us when it shouldn't.
Yeah.
And we operate as though we are Americans who love our kids and love our country. Then that's what should matter right there.
Absolutely. And I think back to root cause is that we have a lot of fires we're putting out right now. I mean, we have
Mm-hmm.
some of the school agenda issues. We have a governor that isn't paying attention to us. You know, we have a number of issues that are all hot button topics. There's recalls going on right and left. But what it
Mm-hmm.
all relates to is a flaw in the education of our kids to begin with. You know,
Yeah.
if we start that, if we don't fix that, we're just going to fight these arguments over and over again. So, you know, what we need, and I'll kind of outline what the initiative is about here. We're going to take all the school funding that the state of California puts in, which is called Prop 98 funding, because that's
Mm-hmm.
the law that makes it. That's $14,000 a year. We're going to take that money, put it into an educational savings account that a parent can opt into. And at that point, you can use that money to apply to tuition at any accredited school. So you could stay in public or charter if you want to, and it'd be free. That's how it works. We're not changing anything there. Or you could go to private school. You could go to faith-based schools. You could go to homeschools, any other option that you want. So, I mean, can you imagine anything more impactful on our society than allowing parents who want to choose a faith-based school or a homeschool to
Yes.
choose that without taking a
Mm-hmm.
financial penalty for it, you know, without having to now
Yeah.
pay out of pocket for tuition
Mm-hmm.
or, you know, incur all the costs and everything. So with
Yeah.
faith-based schools, for example, the average tuition is somewhere around $6,000 or $7,000 a year, and
Wow.
so we're going to provide 14,000 as a. So what happens there? First of all, you know, there are a lot of churches that provide charitable support for parents that can't afford to go to faith-based schools. So all that money is going to get freed up to use for actual charitable stuff. They could feed the homeless. You know, they could do more outreach. I mean, there's so many things they could do, you know, if they didn't have to provide that support. So that's issue number one. More parents could afford, you know, to make that choice if they wanted to, which is issue number two. And then what's critical about this is that if you don't use your full credit, so if you get $14,000 a year and say you spend 6,000 on a faith-based school tuition or nothing in homeschooling, you that difference accumulates and can be used for college or vocational school at the end. So if you're a pure homeschooling parent, if you're on a private affidavit and you're costing nothing, you could end up with almost $200,000 per child to send them to college or vocational school when they
Mm.
graduate. No new
Yeah.
taxes. It's all the money we have right now.
Okay. Now, who would be monitoring how much money is in each count, and how? And so parents would actually have to opt in. They would have to know about that to sign up for it, right? Is that how?
Yes, yes. So as far as monitoring goes, the state would be setting up the accounts in some way. I'm not quite sure the mechanics of how all the financials would work,
Hmm. Hmm.
but there would be some method of it would be put into investment accounts, but they wouldn't be. It's not like you can put it all on Bitcoin. You know, it'll be similar to more restricted like 529 college plans and things where you have limitations on what you can spend it on and so on and so forth. So it's not a blank check. I mean, fundamentally, one of the problems that we have is that there are parents out there that would take the money, lock their kid in a closet, and go out and spend it on cigarettes and beer. You
Yeah.
know, we know that there's just
Mm-hmm.
parents like that, and we can't allow that. You know, so there needs to be some safeguards in place to prevent that from happening. So that's how the accounts, you know, would work.
Yeah.
Um,
Now, is there enough money in this Prop 98 funding for every parent? Now we have a lot of parents who are illegal in the state. How would that work when you have people who have children in school who are illegal in the country? Would they also have access to that?
You know, I don't know the exact answer to that, but probably not, because it would seem that you would have to be registered to do it. That's a good question. I'll have to ask. But I know that if you keep your kid in the public school, public or charter, the system works the same as it does now. So if the child of an illegal is in a school right now, nothing would change on that. So we're not denying anybody an education. But on the other hand, I suspect that the actual account would need to be set up by a citizen of some sort. You would likely need to have a social security number for that child in order to set the account up, just like you do for a 529 plan or any other program right now.
Okay. Now I know you said that if there's money left over, they could also go to college,
Mhm.
and it would be a college of their choice, or how would that work rolling over? And myself, of course, we know parents really need to pay attention to what's happening in the colleges, because the indoctrination of our kids starts from the time they are born. And when they start going to preschool, they've been indoctrinated. And so even and at the college level, kids parents send their kids away to college, especially if they've been raised in a Christian home or conservative home, and they go to school, and my goodness, they don't even recognize their kid when they after they've gone through the
Yeah.
education at some of these colleges.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, we're not affecting that, unfortunately. I mean,
Yeah.
that is a bit of a free market. I mean, you don't have to send your kids to colleges that do that.
Hmm.
There are colleges out there that are more conservative and have, maybe the values that your family has. So, we're not trying to fix that particular problem. There's not much we can do about that. We're just trying to provide parents who
Hmm.
can't afford college with money to do that. And I would suspect that if a parent chooses homeschooling in general right now, or chooses a faith-based school or some school that has a lower tuition, and they end up with money left over for college, I suspect those parents are paying attention to those issues more so than just about anybody
Yeah.
else.
Now, now the money that they have in that account, is that just to be spent in California, or if they want to go to school out of state, can they use it out of state or just in California?
On the K through 12 schools, it would have to be used in California because the accreditation process is statewide, and we can only apply it to accredited schools. As far as the college funding afterwards, no, they could spend it at any college or vocational school. If you want to be a plumber and there's a program or a computer tech or whatever, the money could be applied to that as well.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's great. I just hope parents will do their research on, where they're sending their precious little ones, big ones as they grow,
Yep,
pay
always.
close attention to what environment you're putting them in.
Mhm.
Now you say that no extra cost to the state taxpayer, or no new taxes. How would that work, if as far as the taxes? I know you talked about it, but
Sure, sure. Well, right now there is a legislation. It's called Prop 98 that was passed in the late 90s, that takes a certain percentage of the general fund of the state and allocates that to education. So we're not changing that. That same funding would still
Mhm.
flow, same percentage, no difference. The only difference, so right now, the state provides each school district with $13,977 per child as their portion of the funding for that school. The actual total funding is over $20,000 because the federal government contributes some, the local taxes contribute some, there's bond funds, there's various shell games that go on that actually hide some of the money. But the state only portion, the Prop 98 only portion, is roughly $14,000.
Hmm.
So we just take that money, we divide it up by all the kids, and that's the money that goes into their savings account. We're not adding anything to that or raising taxes or any of that.
Hmm. Any chance they could run out of money and have too many kids?
Well, it would reduce the amount. If you had, like,
Okay.
right now, there's about 5.5 million school kids in the state.
Oh, okay.
If that increased by some exorbitant amount, then it would reduce the per child credit. But
Okay.
so far, enrollment is declining in the state in general. We've been dropping kids every year. And meanwhile, of course, tax revenue goes up because it's a percentage of a higher number. So
Mhm.
so far, history has been that revenue just goes up every year, not down.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, that's good. I hope parents take advantage of it, and we can get the word out,
Yeah,
Todd.
yeah, absolutely.
And I know you're working very hard to do that now. That it is projected that all it would do to give parents more control over education of their kids. Now, we all know that parents who care about their kids and about their education, and we know that we all care about that, and those who do, how do we work, Todd, on getting this word out to parents? I know we're talking here, and I know you do a lot with getting the word out. How can we make sure every parent uh, knows about this?
Tell
Is
your
there?
friends. tell your friends, get involved. I mean,
Mhm.
Dolores, you and I have met at several events where
Yeah.
people, like-minded people gather. I have done a whole bunch of different events with tables and informational tables and things
Mhm.
to talk to people. And I can tell you that it is not a sales job. If you stop any parent out there and say, how would you like to have control over where your kids are educated?
Mhm.
It's like
Mhm.
99.9% agreement. I mean, every
Yeah.
once in a while I run into somebody who wants to argue with me. Typically they're a union member.
Mhm.
And typically their concern is more based on their own interest than in the kids' interests. So, we see that all the time, but I can tell you that if you want to get involved, or if you want to make this happen, which is what we want, the best way to do is to get involved. There's a couple of ways you can do that. One is to go to our website, which is californiaschoolchoice.org, californiaschoolchoice.org. And you can add your name to our supporter list there. That gets you on the email list. That lets you
Mhm.
see what's happening. I send out an email to San Diego every week. There's one that's going to
Mhm.
go out this morning that kind of updates on what events are happening. We're going to promote like-minded people. This podcast will probably be on it. We'll also have, there's a couple of rallies happening this weekend, Recall Newsom rallies. There's a Larry Elder event that's happening on Sunday. So there's a lot of stuff that we promote on that. So get on that email list is issue number one. Number
Okay.
two is if you have the time to volunteer, check off the volunteer box. If you check
Okay.
off that volunteer box, that comes to me. That doesn't mean that you're now required to spend, the 80 hours a week I spend doing this. I mean, really, all being a volunteer means is you get a second email every week, and it'll say, okay, we're going to be at Recall Newsom in Escondido at 9 o'clock on Saturday morning. How would you like to join us, help work the table, talk to people? So if you want to come out and spend a few hours chatting with people and helping pass out literature and all that, we would love to have you. Those conversations are so great. I have met so many good people. I mean, I can tell you that there's people have a lot of trepidation about doing that because some people are just not, into that kind of social thing. But I can tell you that every single person who has come with me or with one of my volunteers to attend one of those things comes away with it going, this was awesome. I wish I had done this earlier, because you just do nothing but talk to good people. You have these
Wow.
great conversations with good people. Sunny out, it's beautiful, it's great. So volunteer, sign up, californiaschoolchoice.org. Volunteer if you can. If you can't volunteer, of course, donations are great. I
Yeah.
mean, we're in the middle of this is going to be a pitched battle with the union. They have
Mhm.
very deep pockets. If you can throw in $50 or if you can put down $5 a month or, whatever you can do, like all these causes, I know
Yes.
everybody wants a bit of your wallet, but, I think that when it comes to solving our problems, this is, at least I think it's one of the highest priorities there is. So, if you can't volunteer the time, you can volunteer, a few dollars. That would be awesome. And then spread the word, get out there.
Yes.
And if you're social media, get out there on social media. If you're not, text, email, if you're a member of a group, like where Dolores and I first met, which I forget if it was the North County Conservatives
East
or the
County.
East County Conservatives. Okay. Okay.
Well, we were out with yeah, out in El Cajon.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That was
We went
David.
out there, and then of course we were at Tracy's event.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, with the
And
with
were
her
you at the women
documentary on the
VIPs?
matter of life.
Were you at the women VIPs as well?
Yes, women's
Yeah.
VIP.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
So groups like that, I would love to talk to them. There is nothing I would like to do better than to get in front of a group like that, particularly church related groups, because there
Mm-hmm.
is nothing that could be better for our churches than to be able to send our kids to
Yeah.
the education that works for parents who want to do that. Nothing. So
Well, I,
mhm.
I think probably getting into the, of course, a lot of the churches are still closed. Not all of them are open, but I think getting into the church is probably especially the larger churches, that's probably a good place too.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a problem because a lot of churches are not willing to be at the forefront of advocacy. There are a lot of churches that are a little shy about that. Understandably, I mean,
Oh
they're that's not what they're about. They're about
yeah.
different things, and so I can understand that. But we're nonpartisan. We're
Oh
we're
yeah.
not we're not out there, you know, pushing gubernatorial
Oh
candidates
yeah.
or any of that stuff. I mean, we just want the best for our kids. So
To me, that should be a good partnership, because you're not pushing politics. You're
I
simply
would
pushing something that will help our children.
I would think so too. And if anybody out there has a connection, be sure to let me know. My email is San Diego at, and then it's a little difficult of a one, but it's CAS as in Sam, C as in Charlie, F as in Frank.com. San Diego at CASCF.com. Think about it as California, CA, School Choice Foundation.com.
Oh,
And
okay.
if you email me, I would love to connect up. I have just had a lot of reluctance so far from church-based organizations to allow us to get in front of their parents and speak to them. So
That's unfortunate. It's
yeah,
unfortunate.
yeah,
We'll
yeah,
have to do something we'll have to work to change that, because this is it's all good, a good thing for our children, and parents would benefit too by the choice that it would give them,
yeah,
just a
yeah.
wonderful opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're a parent who doesn't believe in religious education, then you don't have to. It's not a
Yeah,
requirement. So
that's the good thing, is you don't have to go that route.
yeah, yeah, it's all about
Yes.
choice. Yep, yep.
Yeah, I think it's, as parents are aware of what's been taught in school, that should open their minds to, for them to see that they have a choice, that they don't have to have their kids indoctrinated, into what's happening today.
Oh yeah, what it all boils down to
CRT
is
and all these other things that are,
yeah,
coming at our young people. I mean, the sex stuff and all that stuff, sex ed that's being taught, and just so many things that come against children and family.
yeah. I mean, we saw last spring, when schools were being kept closed, we saw demands by unions to defund the police. We saw
Yep.
demands, to get themselves raises before they went
Mm-hmm.
back to work. Everything except what is best for the kid.
Yep. Exactly.
And as you say, with all the social agenda issues and everything
Yeah.
else, it's time. It's time for parents to
Oh
be able to
yeah.
say, I'm going to opt out. I'm going to go somewhere else. And we need to support those schools that do
Mm-hmm.
something else. We
Yeah.
need to encourage them.
Unfortunately, a lot of people are opting to leave California, and
Yeah, yeah, which is
that's
unfortunate.
it is unfortunate for the
Yeah,
state,
yeah,
because it's a beautiful state. We just need to change the politics here, and change how we do things
yeah.
in the
Our
state.
schools are seeing a huge enrollment decline. The public schools,
Oh
at
yeah.
one point it was almost 10%, and now it's down to a smaller number. But there's huge enrollment declines because parents are now seeing this.
Oh yeah.
They're taking the bull by the horns themselves and doing it, whether they get
Yeah.
provided with money or not.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to be able to reward those parents so they're not just throwing away their tax dollars, contributing to a system that they're not getting anything out of, and then having to pull out of pocket to pay
Yeah.
for alternative schools. So.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay. Well, you know what, Todd? This has been great,
Yeah.
and I want you to give any final comments and any final message you'd like to leave. If you could
Sure,
do that right now.
sure. I don't know if this will show up. Let's see here. I don't know if you can see that.
No, I can't
No, it's
see
not
it.
showing
It's
up.
kind of,
It's
I kind of see parts of it.
yeah.
Why
What the
don't you
sign
read it to us?
So what the sign says is, I need to be able to tell my children I did not stay silent.
Oh,
And
okay.
and I think more than anything, parents out there, you might be sitting here listening and thinking, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That, we need to do that. But if you don't take action, it's not going to happen. So,
Yeah.
you need to be able to look your kids in the eye and say, I helped, I
Yes.
contributed, I got out there, I spent 2 hours at the Recall Newsom rally in Ramona, this weekend, talking to people and trying to make this happen. That's the kind of thing that we need parents. We need to make sure that you can tell your kids, you did not stand by and be silent while these things were going on. So
Mhm.
if anything, that's, I think, the message we need to get out there.
Amen. Thank you, Todd.
All right. Thank you.
Really appreciate what you're doing.
Thank you very much.
And I want to thank my audience, each of you, for coming to listen, to watch this podcast each week. I really appreciate it. You can contact me at dwsviewstandup@gmail.com. And don't forget to subscribe, hit that red button so you'll know when my podcasts are coming out. And share, share, share. Please share these posts with your friends and with those who will benefit from them. We try to we just try to reach everyone with things that will benefit and will be helpful. And my challenge each week, as it is, Todd, everyone I challenge is just stand up for what's right, and come back and join us again next week. We'll have another guest. And guess what? If we do not stand up for what we believe,